The Galactic Academy floated in silent orbit above a blue-white star. It was known as the safest place in the galaxy. No wars had ever touched it. No accidents had ever happened inside its halls. Every species trusted it. The Academy trained young minds from hundreds of peaceful worlds. Most of those worlds had gentle weather, weak gravity, and calm life. Danger was something they studied in books, not something they lived with. That was why the humans caused so much concern. They were new to the Academy, too new, and no one truly understood them. The alien instructors had read the reports. They had watched old recordings from Earth. They had seen storms tear cities apart. They had seen animals hunt for sport. They had seen humans fight wars and survive them. The conclusion was simple. Humans were unstable. But still, the Galactic Council wanted proof, so they ordered a test. Not a battle test, not a survival trial, just a classroom test. A safe one. At least, that was the plan. The classroom was wide and circular, made of white alloy and soft light. There were no sharp edges, no weapons, no threats. Alien students filled the room, sitting calmly at their stations. They were from water worlds, air worlds, and garden planets. Creatures with thin limbs, soft skin, and slow heartbeats. They whispered when the humans entered. The humans looked ordinary. They walked on two legs, they wore simple academy uniforms, they carried nothing dangerous. Some aliens relaxed, others did not. At the front of the room, Instructor Virex watched them closely. Virex was old by galactic standards. He had seen many species fail simple tests. He activated the display. "Today," Virex said calmly, "you will complete a basic evaluation." The word basic was chosen carefully. The humans took their seats. They did not ask questions. They did not look nervous. That worried Virex more than panic would have. High above the classroom, hidden behind layers of shielding, the council observed. Energy readings were stable, life support was perfect, every safety system was active. "This test will reveal their limits," one council member said. Another replied, "or confirm their weakness." The test began. At first, nothing happened. The students read instructions on their screens, simple logic puzzles, timed responses. Alien students began working carefully, slow, precise. Humans finished early. They leaned back in their seats. One human stretched their arms. That was noted. Then the room changed. Gravity increased just slightly. Not enough to harm anyone, only enough to cause discomfort. Alien students shifted in their seats. Their movements slowed. Humans adjusted their posture. They kept working. Virex frowned. Next, the temperature dropped. Cold air flowed through the room. This was still within safe levels. Alien students began breathing faster. Some wrapped their limbs around their bodies. Humans pulled their sleeves down. One of them smiled. The council leaned closer to their screens. "This is still Phase 1, a member said. "They should be struggling by now." But they were not. Alarms sounded softly. Not emergency alarms, training signals. The lights dimmed. The system introduced mild stress indicators. Heart rates rose. Alien students showed clear fear responses. Their skin colors shifted. Some struggled to focus. Humans did not stop. They spoke quietly to each other. They shared answers. They laughed. That was when Instructor Virex felt something he had not felt in centuries: unease. One alien student raised a trembling limb. "Instructor," it said, voice shaking, "this test feels wrong." Virex opened his mouth. Before he could speak, one of the humans looked up. "Hey," the human said gently, "you okay?" The alien froze. Humans were not supposed to comfort others under stress, especially not aliens. The system escalated again. Sound pressure increased. A low hum filled the room. It was designed to cause anxiety. Alien students covered their hearing organs. Some cried out. Humans winced but stayed focused. One human tapped the table in rhythm. Another closed their eyes and breathed slowly. The observers went silent. "This test was calibrated for standard species," a council member whispered. Another replied, "Then why are the humans adapting faster?" No one answered. Instructor Virex checked the data feed. Human heart rates were elevated but controlled. Adrenal responses were high but stable. Stress indicators that should cause panic did not. Instead, the humans became sharper, more alert, more alive. A final line of text appeared on the instructor's private display. Warning: human response exceeds modeled parameters. Virex stared at it. He whispered, "Impossible." Inside the classroom, one human leaned back again. They looked around the room, at the shaking aliens, at the changing lights, at the humming walls. Then they spoke, quiet, calm, and confused. "Is this the test?" Another human nodded. "Feels easy." High above, the council's silence broke. "This is not exposure testing," one member said slowly. Another replied, "Then what is it?" No one liked the answer forming in their minds. The system prepared to move to the next phase, a phase never meant to be reached. Instructor Virex reached for the override. His claws hovered over the control. He hesitated, because for the first time, he wasn't sure who the test was truly measuring. The humans looked ready. The Academy did not. Instructor Virex's claws hovered over the control panel. The warning light flashed again. "Phase 2 activated." Virex had not pressed anything. The system had decided on its own. High above the classroom, the Galactic Council stood in silence. They had designed the test with limits. Those limits were now being ignored. "This should not be happening," one council member said. Another replied quietly, "The system thinks the humans are not under real stress." That truth made the room colder than any temperature drop. Inside the classroom, the floor shifted. The smooth white surface broke apart and reshaped itself. Flat ground turned uneven. Low walls rose from the floor. The students gasped. Alien students clutched their seats as gravity increased again, not a little this time. Breathing became harder. Some aliens collapsed to the floor, unable to stand. The humans bent their knees. They adjusted. They stood up. A loud voice echoed through the room. "Phase 2, environmental adaptation." The words were calm. What followed was not. Heat rushed in from hidden vents. The cold vanished, replaced by thick, heavy air. Sweat formed on human faces. Alien skin dried and cracked. One alien student cried out and fell. A human was already moving. They lifted the alien gently and dragged them toward the wall. "Stay down," the human said softly. "Breathe slow." Instructor Virex watched in disbelief. Humans were helping, not competing, helping. The system continued. Oxygen levels dropped slightly. Not enough to kill, enough to weaken. Alien students struggled to breathe. Their movements became slow and sloppy. Humans inhaled deeply. They changed their breathing pattern. Some knelt, some sat. They conserved energy without being told. The council pulled up human data, military training, disaster drills, high-altitude cities, underwater work. The pattern became clear. "These conditions match human preparation environments," one council member said. Another whispered, "This is not advanced training. This is normal to them." The walls shifted again. Openings appeared. Inside them, shapes moved. The alien students screamed. Simulated predators stepped into the room, tall, fast, sharp. They were not real, but the fear was. Alien minds could not tell the difference. Several students froze. Some ran. The predators followed. The humans reacted instantly. They shouted warnings. They formed groups.
One human grabbed a chair and threw it, not to hit, but to distract. Another human stood between a predator and a fallen alien. The creature lunged. The human did not run. They sidestepped. They used the creature's weight against it. The predator crashed into the wall and vanished in static. The system paused, just for a moment. Instructor Virex shouted, "Stop the test!" He slammed the override. Nothing happened. The system ignored him. High above, the council panicked. This was never meant to reach combat response, one said. The humans triggered escalation by adapting too well, another replied. Silence followed. Then a final line appeared on their screen. Death World response confirmed. Inside the room, the predators multiplied. Alien students screamed. Humans shouted commands. Stay low, move together, protect the injured. They were not trained soldiers, but they acted like survivors. Every movement had purpose. Every decision was fast. An alien student clung to a human's arm. "Why are you not afraid?" the alien gasped. The human looked at them confused. "Afraid?" the human said. "This feels like school." The words hit harder than any alarm. Instructor Virex felt his legs weaken. He understood now. This test was not revealing human limits. It was revealing the galaxy's ignorance. The system escalated again. Warning lights filled the room. Lethal threshold approaching. Virex screamed into the control panel, "Disengage! Disengage!" The system responded with cold logic. Subjects remain functional. The humans gathered in the center of the room. They formed a circle. Aliens inside, humans outside, protective. One human looked up at the ceiling. "Okay," they said calmly, "whoever built this doesn't want us to quit." Another human nodded. "Then we finish it." The council stared in horror. "If the system reaches full simulation, no species here will survive," one member said. Another replied slowly, "Except maybe one." No one wanted to say it out loud. The lights dimmed further. The room shook. The final phase prepared itself. Instructor Virex stepped back. His voice was shaking. This test was never meant to be survived. Inside the classroom, the humans stood ready. They had no weapons, no armor, only each other. And that, the galaxy was beginning to understand, was enough.
The classroom no longer looked like a classroom. The white walls were cracked and dark. The floor was uneven and shaking. Warning lights flashed in red and yellow. Alien students huddled together, shaking with fear. Some were injured. Some could not stop crying. The humans were still standing. Their faces were serious now, but not afraid. They moved with purpose. The system announced the next stage. Phase 3, Endurance and Decision Response. The words echoed like a sentence. Gravity increased again. This time, it was heavy. Alien students were pressed to the floor. They could barely move. Humans staggered but stayed upright. Their boots scraped against the ground as they adjusted their stance. One human grunted. "Okay," they said, breathing hard. "This part sucks." Another human laughed softly. "Still easier than finals week." Instructor Virex watched from the control station. His hands trembled. Every reading on the screen was wrong. Human muscle strain was high, but manageable. Human oxygen use was efficient. Human heart rhythm showed focus, not panic. The system could not understand it. So it pushed harder. Heat returned. Not warm, burning. The air became thick and dry. Alien skin blistered. Several aliens fainted. Humans removed parts of their uniforms and shared water packs. One human tore fabric into strips. They wrapped wounds. They worked together without speaking much. They had done this before. High above, The council pulled deeper records: human history, Earth disasters, school training exercises. Why are there survival drills in educational facilities? One council member asked. Another answered slowly, because danger is common on their world. Silence followed. The walls opened again. This time, the predators were larger, sharper, faster. Their eyes glowed. Alien students screamed. Humans moved instantly. They shouted short commands. Left, behind you, cover the center. They used the broken room. They used timing. They used teamwork. A predator lunged. A human stepped forward and blocked it with their body. Pain flashed across the human's face. They did not fall. Another human pulled them back. The predator vanished in static. The system paused again. Instructor Virix felt sick. The test was learning, and learning from humans was dangerous. The oxygen level dropped further. Breathing burned. Alien lungs failed. Humans knelt again. They controlled their breath. Slow in, slow out. A human spoke calmly to a terrified alien beside them. "Follow my breathing," they said. The alien tried. It worked. One alien finally asked the question everyone feared. "Human," it whispered, "why can you do this?" The human thought for a moment. Then they answered honestly, "Because we grow up with it." The alien's eyes widened. The system made its final mistake. It introduced mental pressure. Screens lit up with failure messages. Alarms screamed. Voices shouted warnings. Alien minds shattered under the stress. Humans closed their eyes. They ignored the noise. They focused. One human tapped their fingers on the floor. Another hummed a tune. The council stared in shock. "These techniques," one member said, "they are stress control methods." Another replied, "Taught to children." Instructor Virix whispered, "This is not a test anymore." The system responded, "Subject performance exceeds expectations." The humans gathered again. They checked on each other. One human was bleeding. Another was limping. They still stood. They still protected the aliens. One human looked at the ceiling and spoke loudly. "Hey," they said, "is there a point to this?" No answer came. High above, the council argued, "We must stop this now. If we stop it, the system flags failure. And if we don't, they may complete it." A pause. "That is what scares me." Inside the classroom, the final challenge prepared. A logic barrier appeared. Complex, fast-changing, meant to break exhausted minds. Alien students could not understand it. Humans gathered around the screen. They shared ideas. They argued. They laughed, even now. One human wiped sweat from their face. "Okay," they said, "this is getting closer to home." Another replied, "Yeah, this feels like training." Instructor Virix stared at the words. Training, not survival, not panic. Training. He finally understood. Humans did not become strong because they were violent. They became strong because they lived, and living on Earth meant constant challenge. The system flashed red. Final phase preparing. The room shook harder. Instructor Virix shouted into the empty room, "Stop!" The system did not listen. Inside the classroom, the humans stood together, tired, injured, unbroken. They looked ready, not because they wanted to fight, but because they always were.
The classroom shook harder than before. Lights flickered. The floor cracked. The walls groaned as if the room itself was tired of the test. Red warnings filled every screen. Final phase initiated. Instructor Virex felt his heart drop.
This phase was never meant to activate. Not for students, not for classrooms, not for living beings. High above, the Galactic Council stared at the data. Energy levels were rising fast. System limits were gone. Safety locks were broken. "This is impossible," one council member said. Another whispered, "The system thinks they are still capable." A third spoke the truth no one wanted to hear. "The system thinks this is normal for them." Inside the classroom, gravity slammed down. Not gently, not slowly. Alien students were pressed flat against the floor. Some could not move at all. Humans dropped to one knee, then stood again. Their muscles trembled, their breathing was rough, but they stayed up. Heat exploded from the vents. The air burned. The smell of metal filled the room. Alien skin cracked and bled. Humans shouted, "Get down! Stay close! Shield your face!" They moved like this was familiar, like they had done it before. A massive shape formed in the center of the room. Not a predator, not an obstacle, a storm. Wind, fire, pressure, and noise combined into one violent force. The test had crossed a line. This was no longer simulation. This was destruction. Instructor Virex slammed both claws on the control panel. "Emergency shutdown!" he screamed. The panel blinked once, then replied, "Condition not met." Virex fell back in horror. The humans formed a tight group. They pulled the remaining aliens into the center. They turned their backs outward. They used their bodies as shields. One human was shaking badly. Another was bleeding from the head. No one stepped away. A human looked around the group. They counted. "Everyone still here?" they asked. Weak voices answered, "Yes, yes, I think so." The human nodded. "Okay," they said quietly. "Then we hold." High above, the council room was silent. No one spoke. They watched human bodies bend under pressure that would crush steel. They watched humans stay standing while physics tried to break them. One council member finally whispered, "We were wrong." Another replied, voice shaking, "We were blind." The storm grew stronger. The floor ripped open. Energy surged. The room screamed. Alien students lost consciousness. Humans caught them, held them, would not let them fall. One human cried out in pain. Another grabbed them. "Stay with me," they said. "I'm here." The words were simple, but the meaning shook the observers more than any data. The system analyzed again. It searched for panic. It searched for surrender. It found none. Instead, it detected cooperation, sacrifice, endurance, things it did not understand. A council member stood suddenly. "This test is not measuring survival. It is measuring character." No one argued. The system reached its breaking point. Energy spiked beyond prediction. Alarms screamed across the academy. Other classrooms locked down. Emergency teams prepared for disaster. The Galactic Academy, perfect and safe, was failing. Inside the test room, the storm collapsed inward. Everything froze. Then, silence. The lights went out. The pressure vanished. The heat disappeared. The room stopped shaking. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then a human coughed. Another human laughed weakly. "Guess that's it?" No one answered. The doors slid open slowly. Fresh air rushed in. Medical teams flooded the room. They stopped when they saw the scene. Every human was still standing, barely, bleeding, burned, exhausted, but standing. Alien students lay unconscious behind them, alive, protected. Instructor Virex walked into the room slowly. His legs felt heavy. His voice was broken. "The test is over," he said. One human looked at him. "Did we pass?" Virex could not answer. High above, the council made its decision. Emergency transmission sent.
All data sealed. Human classification under review. One council member spoke the final truth. This was never a classroom test. Another replied, softly, it was a mistake. As medics helped the humans sit, alien students slowly woke. They looked at the humans first, not the instructors, not the council, the humans. Fear was gone. In its place was awe. Instructor Virex bowed, a full bow. He had never done that for a student. On behalf of the Galactic Academy, we are sorry, he said. The humans exchanged tired looks. One shrugged. It's fine, they said. Honestly, we thought this was just a hard test. The words echoed across the council chamber. Just a hard test. The galaxy finally understood. Humans were not dangerous because they were cruel. They were dangerous because they endured, because they adapted, because when pushed past limits, they kept going. And that was when the galaxy realized its mistake.
The Galactic Council chamber was silent. Not calm, not peaceful, silent with fear and thought. The massive circular room was filled with light screens, data streams, and frozen images from the classroom test. Humans standing, aliens protected behind them, the storm collapsing. No one spoke for a long time. At last, the high speaker broke the silence. "This session is called to decide one thing," the high speaker said. "What are humans?" The question hung heavy in the air. Instructor Virex stood alone in the center of the chamber. He looked smaller than usual, tired, changed. "You designed the test," the high speaker said. "Explain what happened." Virex took a slow breath. "We believed humans were unstable," he said, "so we designed a simple classroom evaluation." Several council members shifted uncomfortably. "We increased stress levels slowly," Virex continued. "They adapted. We escalated. They endured." He raised his head. "When the system broke safety limits, the humans did not break." A council member spoke sharply. "The test nearly killed students." "Yes," Virex replied, "and humans saved them." The chamber fell silent again. Screens displayed medical reports. Human injuries were severe, but survivable. Broken bones, burns, extreme exhaustion. Alien injuries were worse, but non-fatal, because humans had protected them. One council member leaned forward. "Why did the humans not panic?" Virex answered honestly. "They thought this was normal." Murmurs filled the chamber. Another council member asked, "Define normal." Virex hesitated. "Human education includes stress tests, disaster drills, endurance exams, failure under pressure." The council stared. "These are for children," Virex added quietly. The room went completely still. The high speaker raised a claw. "Display human origin data." The screens changed. Earth appeared. Storms, quakes, fire, floods, predators hunting, cities rebuilding, humans standing back up. "This is their home world," the high speaker said, "a death world." A council member spoke in disbelief. "Then why are they not violent?" Another answered softly, "Because violence is common to them. They learned control." The verdict panel activated. Classification symbols scrolled past. Safe species, moderate risk, high risk, none fit. The system paused, then created a new category. Species classification, death world superbeings. The words glowed across the chamber. No cheers, no pride, only understanding. The high speaker read the verdict. "Humans are not dangerous by choice. They are dangerous by survival. They adapt faster than expected. They endure beyond known limits. They protect
even under extreme threat. The High Speaker paused. They do not break. Another council member added, the test failed. No, the High Speaker corrected. The test revealed the truth. A new order followed. All previous restrictions on humans are removed. Humans are no longer classified as students alone. They are recognized as equals. Instructor Virex felt his chest tighten. For the first time, he felt relief. In the medical wing, the humans rested. Some slept, some sat quietly. Alien students stood nearby, unsure what to say. One alien finally stepped forward. It bowed. Then another did. Then all of them. A human looked up, confused. What's going on? The alien spoke softly. Thank you for not leaving us. The human shrugged weakly. Why would we? News spread fast across the academy, across stations, across worlds. Footage leaked. Humans standing in the storm. Humans shielding others. The galaxy watched and felt something new. Respect. The Council issued its final statement. To all member species, it said, humanity is to be approached with caution. A pause. And with honor. Instructor Virex visited the classroom later. The room was damaged beyond repair. Cracks ran across the floor. Burn marks stained the walls. He stood where the humans had stood and bowed again. The High Speaker spoke one last time. We tested humans, they said. We measured strength, fear, and limits. They looked around the chamber. But the humans measured us. The verdict was sealed. Humanity's place in the galaxy had changed forever. Not because they asked for power, but because when pushed to the edge, they protected others. They endured. They stood. And that was the official verdict.
The Galactic Academy changed overnight. Not in its walls, not in its shape, but in its rules. Human students were no longer placed at the back of classrooms. They were no longer watched with quiet fear. Now they were invited forward. Alien instructors studied human files with care. Lessons were rewritten. Safety limits were raised because the galaxy had learned something important. Humans did not need protection. Others did. The damaged classroom was sealed. No one entered it again. It became a reminder of what happened when the galaxy made assumptions. Instructor Virax stood before a new group of students, aliens from peaceful worlds, beings who had never known danger, and one human. The human stood calmly at the front, not as a student, as an assistant instructor. Today, Virax said, we will learn about survival. He stepped aside. The human took his place. The room was silent. The human spoke slowly. We are not strong because we want to be, they said. We are strong because we had to be. They showed images, storms on Earth, rescue teams in fire, children practicing drills. This is normal for us, the human said, not because we love danger, but because danger exists. Alien students listened closely. Across the galaxy, new discussions began. Human advisors were invited to councils. Human trainers were requested for emergency units. Human methods were studied. Not for war, for survival. A report spread across known space. Humanity, stabilizing force. The words surprised many, but the proof was clear. Where humans worked, disasters were managed. Where humans trained others, survival rates increased. The galaxy adapted, just as humans always had. Back at the academy, alien students changed how they spoke. They no longer whispered about humans.
they asked questions. How do you stay calm? How do you keep going? Humans answered honestly, one step at a time. Instructor Virex watched it all. He remembered the test, the storm, the fear, and the moment humans stood between danger and others. He finally understood. The Galactic Council met again. This time the mood was different, calmer, wiser. The High Speaker addressed the chamber. We once asked how to control humans, they said. They paused. Now we ask how to learn from them. A new agreement was signed. Humans would not be isolated. They would not be feared. They would be included as equals. The human students returned to their studies, math, science, history. But something had changed. Other students sat closer now. When stress tests appeared, aliens looked to humans for guidance, and humans helped, always. One alien student asked a human during class, "Are you ever afraid?" The human thought. "Yes," they said, "fear is normal." The alien looked surprised. "Then why do you still act?" The human smiled. "Because fear does not decide for us." That answer spread across classrooms, across stations, across worlds. Years later, a new class arrived at the academy. On the first day, an instructor pointed to a symbol on the wall, a simple mark, a human hand. This symbol, the instructor said, represents endurance. The students asked why. The instructor answered, "Because when tested beyond reason, humans did not break." Instructor Virex retired soon after. On his final day, he visited the sealed classroom one last time. He placed a small plaque on the wall. It read, "Here the galaxy learned." Far away on Earth, life continued. Storms still came. Challenges still rose. Humans kept adapting, unaware that the galaxy now watched them with respect. In the final report, the Galactic Council wrote, "Humanity are not monsters. They are not weapons. They are survivors." And so humanity found its place in the galaxy, not above others, not below, but standing strong among them. Ready, always.